Fear is going to be a player in your life, but you get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all it will ever be is what's happening here in the decisions that we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear.
Overcoming our fears. How do we do that? Well, it's simple. Just live in love instead. Okay, sounds easy enough, but how do I do that? I mean, I've got so much going on in my life. It's just so hard to not live in fear. Living in fear is truly living in survival. What are you afraid of? Really, what are you afraid of? Why are you fearing so much stuff? Well, let me kind of start from the beginning for me and my fears. So when I was young, I suffered depression when I was a teen, and it was pretty much triggered by fear. I was in middle school, and I was about to go into high school, and I was scared. I was comfortable, and high school was a big step, and it was scary, and my friends were going to be in other places, and it's just a big building, and it's getting close to, having to go to college, and I don't know what I want to do with my life. It's like all these fears. Now, I don't know if that's the one thing that triggered it, but my panic attacks were triggered by fear. And that pretty much went away over time. And then when I first went to my first Dr. Joe Dispenza event, and I tried to jump into meditation, I was fearful. I hadn't had panic attacks in probably 20 years. But as I got into my meditation, I kind of felt the panic attacks coming on because I didn't know what was on the other side. I didn't know what was in the blackness. I mean, blackness, that's scary. And think of when you're a little kid, you're scared of the dark. You don't know. It's the unknown. That's really what you're fearing, is the unknown. So when I jumped in my meditation on one day, I was like, you know what? Several times I felt it coming on. And one time I was just like, okay, I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to let it go. Surrender, that key word there. And when I surrendered, I got into the blackness and I was looking down and, with my eyes closed, and my body wasn't there, but it was exciting. I started giggling out loud. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. What was I so scared of? So a lot of you may even still be at that point in your meditation journey, is you can't overcome that fear of what's going to be in my meditation? What's in the blackness? What's out there, this mystical experience? What if I encounter a being? What's going on? You're going to have all these things going in your head. These are things that are not in the present. They're things that haven't happened. That's fear. And I have to tell you, from me and other people's experiences, there's nothing to be scared of. Oh my goodness. It is like the most exciting thing ever. There is so much to explore in your meditation. There's nothing to be scared of. I mean, you can manifest stuff, you can heal, you can have mystical experiences, you can encounter different things. People are like, oh, what if I encounter a being? You know what? If you encounter a being, that's cool. It's really cool. You're seeing something that most of the whole world doesn't even know exists. And you're experiencing that. There is so much out there that we are so unaware of. And that's what we fear, is the unknown. Stop fearing the unknown. I'm trying to think, it was my first or second event that I went to. And pretty much everybody kind of has that little fear of flying, I guess. It wasn't like debilitating, but on takeoff, you're like, oh, okay. And then landing, you're like, oh, when you hit turbulence, you're like, oh, And so I kind of never liked that so much. But after I was leaving one of my events, I was like, when we were taking off, I was like, whoa, this is cool. And it was like, I don't know, that fear was gone. And I didn't try to get rid of the fear. It just had gone away. It's just like, it's almost like I realized, okay, there's not a lot out there that I really need to be scared of. And jumping into the unknown, my husband was volunteering at an event, and I decided to just last minute take my 5 kids on a plane and meet them out there. And it was the worst flight I'd ever had. It's literally shook me up. I mean, I was wanting to cry, but I had to be brave. I mean, people were sitting next to me and they were like gripping their seat and cussing. and I was getting weak in my knees, and the turbulence was horrible. We were landing and we kept hitting these pockets, and I know those pockets are what's the dangerous part. And then he ended up like flying up and decided not to land, and I'm like, oh shoot. I was like, okay, maybe go to the next airport or something. But no, he circles around and does it again. We're all bouncing up and down. I was like, oh my goodness, it was so horrible. It was like deep back in my mind, I knew I was gonna be okay, but my ego was getting the best of me, because really, I mean, this is like survival. It's like, I have no control over the situation. The pilot has my life in his hands, and I was so scared. And so you'd think that after that experience, once we landed safely, that I wouldn't want to go on a plane again. So then leaving Denver, coming back home, the plane was hitting turbulence on the way down, but it was like nothing. And I was like, this is nothing. You know, I was like, I had no fear over it. It was weird. It was like I needed that to help push my limits. And I think the universe does that to us a lot. When we have bad things happen to us, it's pushing us. And it really pushed me to realize it's okay. I mean, how often do planes crash? Very, very rarely. And they're taking off every day in storms. My husband flew in a freaking hurricane one time. The hurricane was coming in. He was the last plane at the airport, and he was fine. Pilots know. So it's just like, but it's just this fear that we have of the unknown. A lot of times when we fear something, it is survival. And what are we trying to survive? I mean, I can understand if you're like truly like in a burning building, or you're in the middle of a highway and cars are coming at you. You know, I mean, that's survival. That's fear. That's when things need to kick in and you're like, oh my goodness. But you're actually living in the present moment at that point in time. You're actually like, okay, what do I have to do right now? You're not like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? You are kind of looking to the future a little bit, because you're like, okay, if I do this, but you're like thinking like this, you're in the present. And that's good. But for the most part, all of us are not in the present, and we're constantly living in fear because of things that we've learned from our past. Some situation or something happened to us in our past, and that doesn't exist right now. That's in the past. But we're allowing that to feed us right now in our present, and now we fear that. It can be as simple as your mom screamed at a spider when you were like 3, and you were like, oh, my mom's scared of spiders. Spiders are scary. So now all of a sudden you have a fear of spiders. For me, I like spiders. You know, no big deal. I didn't have like some experience that like fed that fear to me about spiders. And so anything that you're fearing is probably because of past experiences. And I know you're probably like me, is when you start thinking of the future and you're like, what if this happens? What if that happens? You know, like, I mean, my kids get sick and I'm like, oh no, what if the next one gets sick? The next one gets sick. Oh my, I start stressing out about all this stuff. It hasn't even happened. I'm not right now in the present. I'm thinking the worst case scenario, and that's usually what we think is the worst case scenario. And how often does that worst case scenario happen? Not very often. When it does, then you're like, okay, I was right. Okay, so you're right sometimes. But how often are you really right? When you're thinking about facing that person at work that you just can't stand. I mean, how many times did that worst case scenario truly, really happen? All you're doing is worrying about something that doesn't even exist. You're putting your effort into something that doesn't exist. Whether you're looking to the future of the worst case scenario or you're thinking of the past of that horrible thing that happened to you. Neither of those exists right now. They're pretend. They're your imagination, truly, if you think about it. You could say, oh, I didn't imagine that in the past. But it's not happening right now. It's in your head, and you're imagining, you're putting an image of that in your head, and you're reliving it. But that's not happening right now. So why are you living that? Why are you reliving that in your head? So it basically is your imagination. You're imagining that thing happening to you right now, and you're feeling those emotions. So, okay, how do I overcome that? Well, really, it's living in the present, but also living out of love. So when you're fearing something that's going to happen, think of it in living in love. I'm trying to think of an example I can give you. Okay, how about think about when you were dating, or if you're still dating. Oh, I can't talk to that person. They're too good looking. They're out of my league. What if they say no? I'm going to feel so rejected. You're living this scenario in your head that hasn't even happened. You're living in fear. If you live in love, you're going to think more positive. And you're like, oh, that person's so handsome. Oh my goodness, I would just love to go talk to them. And what if they talk to me? I would feel so wonderful. You are thinking in the future, but you're living it in love. You're not thinking of the rejection. If you get rejected, oh well, move on. Somebody once told me that after 30 seconds, if you're still thinking about it, that's not good. But if after 2 minutes you're still thinking about something, it gets embedded in your head and it's stuck inside you. So if you get rejected, so what? Do you really care what that person thinks? You gonna see that person again? If you do, so what? Let them think what they want to think. You think for yourself. Just live out of love. Live out of kindness. How many times have you just not done something and you wish you did? Why didn't you do it? Go for that crazy job that you really don't think you could get. Don't just do it on a little piece of paper. Walk into the office. What are they going to do? Turn you away? So what? Is that going to just devastate you? And then you're going to keep feeding off of, oh my goodness, they told me to leave the office because whatever. That's living in fear. You don't want to do something because you fear the outcome. But do something thinking the best out of love and thinking the best case scenario, and it could happen. I mean, they talk about the law of attraction. If you're thinking of something positive and you're trying to manifest something, it could truly happen. If you could imagine yourself walking into this office and be like, all of a sudden you walk in and the guy that's having the job interview happens to overhear you and be like, oh, hey, I don't know. Who knows? You don't know. You don't know. Why are you fearing what you don't know? Because it's scary. Because of my past. Because things have happened to me in my past. But how many times have you gone and done something, you took a risk, and you're glad you did? Yeah, you're going to fail. Okay. That's part of learning. Learn from it. Don't let that overcome you and feed more of that fear and prevent you from doing more. Oh, I'm such a failure. I can never get anywhere. I'm always rejected. Nobody's ever going to love me. Well, keep telling yourself, and that's going to happen. Overcome that and love yourself. You know what? I'm beautiful. I'm going to find somebody. I am smart. I'm going to get that job. Quit living in fear. Another thing I like to think of is the whole living in survival thing. Is, are you going to die? I mean, think about that. When you're about to go do something, are you going to die? Is going and talking to that person, you're going to die? No. So what are you fearing? Really, what are you fearing? If you fear things that don't exist, that is truly insanity. You do kind of drive yourself insane. I mean, think about how much you just sit there with your thoughts and you think about scenarios. You're thinking about something that you want to do. Oh, but this is going to happen. You're thinking about the past. Oh, why did that person treat me that way? Why did that happen to me? Why does that keep happening to me? That stuff doesn't exist right now. It's a glimpse of the memory of the past. It's not here right now. You're not right here. You're not here when you're doing that. When you're in fear, you're not here. Like I said, when you're truly in fear, when you're in survival and you're about to get hit by a bus, you are truly present. You're truly present. You're like, crap, right now, I need to get out of the way. You're not like, oh my goodness, a bus. Oh, I didn't live my life right. Oh, what should I do? Should I run this way? Oh, maybe it'll stop. you're not living in the past, you're not living in the future, you're in the present. So even when you're in survival, you're in the present. So when you're sitting on your couch doing nothing, you're not in the present. You're like, oh my goodness, my horrible life. Oh, my life is still going to be horrible. You're not in the present. Take more risks in your life. My husband's friend said that he's going to start saying yes to everything. And so my husband says, well, I'm going to start doing that too. And he gets some kind of, I don't know, somebody asks him to go on a trip or, something. He's like, I'm just going to say yes. Why say no? Unless it's like life-threatening, but why say no? I mean, some of us are like people pleasers and we're like, yes, yes, I'll do that. Yes, 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 I'll do that. I'm talking about like bigger things that like more like, oh, I'm scared. I can't do that, or I can't afford that. What if it, just say yes and jump in. And now that he's been doing that, it's like, whoa, wow. If even as something as simple as, hey, let's go to the beach. No. Okay, what are you going to do instead? Just sit around and watch a bunch of YouTube videos? Okay, go ahead. Keep living your same old life. Or go to the beach and then come home and be like, wow, I'm really glad I did that. Something very simple. It doesn't have to be big. Well, are you fearing going to the beach? Or are you just comfortable? Live out of love and not fear. And you'll be amazed at how much happier you'll actually be. And how much more exciting your life could be. And how much less stress you can have. Just let that crap go. Quit living in fear and live out of love. Easier said than done, but just live out of love. Simple.